Happy Holy Saturday. Traditionally for our church, we observe this as a day of quiet and rest. I hardly think any of us need encouragement to spend more time in quiet and rest than we've experienced over these last days together. Today also is a day when we thought of Jesus just being in that tomb. While that's certainly an important part of our theology, there's another prayer in our church that might make us think a little differently about this day, the Apostles' Creed. Some of you know when we received the New Roman Missal in 2011, we were given permission and encouragement to use both the Nicene Creed and the Apostles' Creed. Ironically, we were actually planning to change to the Apostles' Creed here at St. Paul's Newman Center for this season of Easter and moving forward. There's an unusual line in there. It talks about Jesus descending into hell. Maybe a better translation is, he went down to the place of the dead. See, for most of the Eastern Church, the experience of Jesus' resurrection isn't a solo affair. It isn't just about him coming forward, but about resurrecting the entirety of creation. The image of going down to the place where people have been sleeping and waiting, and freeing them from that darkness. That's another way to understand what this day is about. And I have to admit, as I was praying about that this morning, a very powerful sense of peace came to my own life. Again, I've referenced before the loss of my mom last year, and I know that when our physical bodies finally turn to dust, that we enter into that space outside of time, of eternity where God exists. And while I am quite confident that she was met by the Lord in that moment of her own passing, today was another chance for me to think of Jesus going to the place of the dead, to imagine that embrace and that comfort, that welcome into God's care. So maybe you want to use this moment as a chance to pray for the beloved dead in your life, to see this day when the Lord comes to free them and to bring about that pattern of new life and resurrection. Today is also a day of preparation, that final day for the women and men who've been preparing to join us fully at the table tonight through those great sacraments of Easter. It would have began here at morning prayer at 9 a.m, followed by a time of retreat, that final reflection on what God's Holy Spirit has been doing in their lives to lead them to this sacred moment. Please keep those women and men in your prayer tonight as well, that desire, that hunger, that longing to be one with us may continue and may sustain them until the time when that's finally able to happen. Obviously, one of the greatest images of Holy Saturday is that Easter fire and that Paschal candle, the light of Christ that breaks through the darkness. There will be no big fire today, no marking of the candle. Instead, the preparation of this candle done privately and in quiet, ready for the Easter sacraments to come ahead when that time may happen. But I just wanted to point out a couple of things as we mark that candle and we recall the beginning of time and the end, the Alpha and the Omega of all that is, the sacred wounds of Christ that bring us that great gift of healing and new life. And in particular, that song of praise that we only use one time a year, that great ancient hymn called the Exultet, praising God, welcoming the new light among us. There are 3 sections that speak powerfully to me. The first one says, "Be glad. Let earth be glad as glory floods her. Ablaze with light from her eternal King, let all corners of the earth be glad, knowing an end to gloom and darkness." I hope those words bring inspiration today. The timing of Easter is rather odd given what's happening in our world. But remember, it's not just about this day. It's about the promise. It's about the universal pattern. It's about the light breaking through whatever darkness we might be experiencing personally and as a society together. The second section here that also opens us up to think of God's love in a different way. To think of Jesus less as a last-ditch effort to rescue us from our sin, and instead as the ultimate expression of God's love affair with the world. Our birth would have been no gain had we not been redeemed. O wonder of your humble care for us. O love, O charity beyond all telling, to ransom a slave you gave away your Son. O truly necessary sin of Adam, destroyed completely by the death of Christ. O happy fault that earned so great, so glorious a Redeemer. I wish we could spend more time with those lines every day of the year, every Sunday that we gather. When we acknowledge our sin, it's an even greater opportunity to acknowledge God's love, to recognize that for most of us, the greatest experiences of God's closeness and God's tenderness have not occurred when things are going well, but when we're in need. Now's the time again to reach out, to see the happy fault coming across our earth as an opportunity to draw closer to the source of love. And finally, this is the night of which it is written, "The night shall be bright as day, dazzling is the night for me and full of gladness. The sanctifying power of this night dispels wickedness, washes faults away, restores innocence to the fallen and joy to the mourners, drives out hatred, fosters concord, and brings down the mighty." So many ways for us to live out our faith in concrete and practical gestures and actions. In these days to come, it's time for us to be an Easter people, to practice even more intensely those gifts of patience and love and kindness, to reach out in even greater abundance and number to those who might be alone or in need. If you're watching this tonight, I would invite you to look at the resource available on the Newman Center to pray Liturgy of the Word in your own home. Now, I doubt any of you are going to attempt all of the readings tonight, but if you want to look at one in particular, the reading from Exodus, the promise of God to lead us out of slavery, not just as a one-time event in the past, but every time we are held captive. If you feel captive in your home now, know that the Exodus is coming. Know that the promise will happen, that God's love and God's freedom are for all people across all time. As a family, gather with candles, turn off all the lights, and light them. That is the light of Christ, dispelling the darkness of this night, the light of Christ in each one of us.